Faith Church. I have something exciting to share with you. You may not find it that exciting, actually, but it was exciting for me. So, when I was younger, my dad, I grew up watching him almost every day do the crossword puzzle, the New York Times crossword puzzle. He did it in pen. My dad was super smart, and he was able to just sit down and do that thing. And I never had any interest in crossword puzzles. But some years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I picked up one on an airplane, I think, or something, and did it. And I've been doing them ever since. I do them as often as I can, and I try to do the New York Times crossword puzzle. It's kind of the the gold standard for crossword puzzles. And if you know anything about the New York Times crossword puzzle, it gets harder as the week goes on. Monday is the easiest. Saturday is the hardest. Sunday is pretty hard too. And for years, I could just do the Monday puzzle. And some years ago, I think I tried Tuesday and got a Tuesday. A couple years ago, I started to try to do the Wednesdays. And it wasn't until this week when I finished my first Thursday crossword puzzle. And I know, not really exciting for you, but it was for me. And I was celebrating did my own little happy dance when I finished the crossword puzzle Friday and Saturday. I'm not sure I'll ever achieve those, but I'm going to keep trying. It's interesting what made me think about this is Genesis 13, which was yesterday's reading, and I'll get to that in a second. But when we have achievements in our life or good things come to us, our tendency is sometimes to give thanks for those things, but often we forget to give thanks, to pause and to be thankful to God for even the little things in our lives that bring us joy. Genesis 13, if you read this yesterday, story about Abraham goes to Egypt, ends up pretending his wife is his sister, but ends up coming back from Egypt a very wealthy man. God has provided for him. In the very last part of the chapter, it just says, Abraham built God an altar. And that phrase and that action you'll see all through Genesis, all through the Old Testament, in fact, that God's people, oftentimes when God does something extraordinary for them, instead of taking credit for it, they will stop and pause and make God an altar, to remember that he was the one, to give him thanks and glory, that he was the one that provided for them. Completing a New York Times crossword puzzle is a very simple thing, and yet for whatever reason, God brought to mind yesterday morning when I read that passage that I ought to make a better practice of giving thanks to God. Even something as simple as this, for the knowledge to be able to do that, for the free time to live in a place and have the luxury to sit and do a puzzle, is something for which I can be thankful for a father. It reminds me of my dad from time to time, who I wish he was still here and we could maybe do one together. He was much better than I was. There's a line in 1 Thessalonians 5 where Paul says we ought to give thanks in all circumstances, not just the big things, but in all things. And it's amazing when you develop this habit of gratitude, even for small gifts, small pleasures in life, to just thank God for those. Of course, we do it often for the big things, the birth of a child, somebody we meet to fall in love with, even just a good meal, but even the simple things. And I would really encourage you, many of you are probably really good at this, to pause in the morning and the evening and just to think of three things even. What are three things for which I'm grateful? And to, in a way, build a little altar there to God to give him glory. Sunday, tomorrow, is a whole day, in fact, set aside for God's glory. A Sabbath day is a day to worship God, to rest from our creating and to just enjoy creation, and to remember that God is the giver of all gifts, that none of this depends on us, that the world continues as we pause and stop and rest and cease and worship. And I look forward to being with you. We won't unfortunately be together in person, but we will be together in spirit, worshiping at 10 o'clock. I encourage you, as always, to invite others to join us online. The text for tomorrow is 1 John chapter 5, verses 6 to 12, and really would encourage you to read that today at some point and reflect a bit, or tomorrow morning before worship, and reflect a bit on those verses and think about what God is teaching us. And I'm excited to share some of the things that God has taught me through this text this week. Reminder tomorrow evening that Greg Kutsona will be teaching the second part of Mere Faith and Mere Science and Christian Faith course. Many of you joined us last week, and all that information, including the links to Sunday morning, is on the webpage, and so I encourage you to join us. So I pray that today will be blessed for you, and that you will find opportunities to pause and to give thanks to God for even the simplest of gifts. So be looking forward to being together tomorrow. Peace.